one side contained a bedroom that I shared with my two older brothers, and the other room was a study that my dad had built, and he had built 5 desks for us to do our homework there. My dad really loved us, and he was really a great man. He was not only a very gifted engineer, he was a brilliant mathematician, he was a brilliant carpenter, and he really cared about us and was a great father. And he built this study where we could focus on our homework after school. But I guess because it had a wooden floor, that's also where he would give us our haircuts. And so he called me up there, or we walked up there for me to get my haircut. And he had a kit and everything that he would do the haircuts with. And before putting that apron over me to cut my hair, he took an envelope that he had taken up there with us. It was a manila envelope that had a red wax seal on it with one of those tie strings. But he was able to just open it up because the seal had already been broken. And the whole purpose of this function was just to show me the photograph of this Martian.
So he had some kind of, future understanding about you as well.
Well, he had clearly been briefed by that point that I was going to be associated with the discovery of life on Mars. Now, I'm being kind of careful here because I have laid claim to the idea that I am the discoverer of life on Mars, but since that remains a controversial claim, I think it's fair to say that I'm principally associated among the discoverers of different things on Mars, both ancient artifacts and, in my case, living life forms that establish that Mars has been inhabited for eons and is inhabited today. So clearly, the U.S. intelligence community knew who I was, and they had my future Mars works. Because in this instance, well, let me just tell you what this photo was. This photo was a humanoid on Tsiolkovsky Ridge, which is a ridge that NASA claims is about 100 feet across, that you can see on the left side of NASA image PIA 10214, which was taken by the NASA Mars Exploration Rover Spirit in November of 2007, beamed back to Earth, and posted on the internet in January 2008.
I'm sorry, Andrew, I'm sorry, can you just hold on 1 second? I have to close the window. It's thundering outside,
yes,
and it's really loud.
Okay, so this photograph you showed was an image that I extracted from NASA image PIA 10214. The humanoid is standing in a cluster of rocks, an artificially assembled cluster of rocks. In fact, one of the rocks has an elaborate carving in the side of it, very much like when we draw an image of the sun and personify the star at the center of our solar system as a human face or as a man. And so this humanoid being the photograph is in my paper, The Discovery of Life on Mars, and in fact, it is the first picture of a humanoid living in its natural state on another planet to ever be published on Earth. So it would make sense that because the Central Intelligence Agency and other alphabet soup agencies in the U.S. that my dad was associated with, to include DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, to include the coordinating military agency responsible for U.S. intelligence, which is the U.S. Navy. My dad was one of those Cold War era engineers that had a secret military rank as a major in the U.S. Army that allowed him to get on and off of military bases. In fact, he was taking me on and off military bases throughout my childhood. But in this instance, he had a very significant photograph from my paper. And in fact, I wrote a series of later monographs just focusing on this particular detail from PIA 10214. It's the first photograph of a humanoid like us on another planet. And in that sense, it's a very historically important image. So they had it, and they not only had it, but they let me see it when I was 8 or 9 years old. In a secret context, a very domestic situation, my dad's giving me a haircut. He opens up an envelope and says, look, you find this, 40 years from now. Actually, he didn't tell me then when I would find it, but he did make it clear that this image of a Martian is something that I personally would discover and publish.
Do you feel that they may have known also about other people's future as well? Do you think that
they have that? The way to put this in context is they were sending personnel forward in time on a limited basis to both just gather artifacts spontaneously, like the day's newspaper, and take it back, and also, I know others were involved in going forward and taking microfilmed summaries of intervening events between, the early 1970s and the year in the future that we were visiting, and we were taking those back to the present. So I think the way to look at this is that they had isolated what they were calling persons of interest. Before the war on terror, a person of interest was not a member of Al-Qaeda or some other terrorist organization. A person of interest was somebody who in some way would do something significant in the future. Now, I could go off on a tangent here and talk about how when I was in college, I met a young Barack Obama, and we discussed the fact that he had already been briefed on the fact that he would become the President of the United States. So I think in a similar way, it's clear that because they knew who I was, and they were literally sharing elements of my future Mars research with me, my own publications, that they had identified me as a person of interest relative to the disclosure of life on Mars and the other things that I'm destined to do as a figure in the disclosure movement. Because they were clearly, I wouldn't say they were grooming me to become the discoverer of life on Mars, but they were just using the quantum access capability that they had to make sure that I knew what my destiny was, even on an unconscious level. Because as I'll show in these other anecdotes regarding the Mars data points in my childhood, it's not like they sat me down and did a lot of extensive discussion for hours about the fact that when I was 47, I would discover life on Mars and write about it. These were just like little memento moris from the future that they were dropping in my past, in my unconscious almost, because they were very limited incidents.
How old are you right now? And how old are you right now, Andrew?
I'm still 47. I'm going to turn 48 in September.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So I did get extensive training in Pegasus. We were being trained on these speed learning machines called tachistoscopes.
Well, that's all the time we have today on the Unified Field. I hope you all enjoyed yourselves. I know I did. I always love being with you folks out here in Radio Land, especially in the realm of the paranormal and the unknown. I love it. I just love it. I'm glad you came along. Hope you enjoyed the coverage of the Psychic Fair. Stay tuned in the coming weeks and episodes for Steve Vernon interview, Halifax's hardest working horror author. We've got the legendary Stanton T. Friedman. We've got Dawn Ledger lined up. It's going to be a wild ride. This show keeps getting bigger and bigger, and of course I want to finish off my 2012 series. I've got shows coming out of my ears. Just as long as you're there to listen, I want to be there to spit it all out, because this is my outlet, this is my voice, and this is your voice. This is about us. The unified field coming together in a forum we can all appreciate and love. Keep your eyes on the sky and you may just be surprised. It may expand you into the infinite, or it may shrink you down to size. Thanks for joining us. Remember that without you, there is no us. Make sure to send your questions, comments, concerns, stories, ideas, anything in between to unifiedfieldradio@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you. And, who knows? Maybe your ideas or anecdotes will make it onto the air all across this amazing CKDU nation and beyond, because we are on YouTube at youtube.com/Unified Field Radio. We're on MySpace at myspace.com/Unified Field Radio in case you missed the live action here on CKDU, or you can't download it from the CKDU archives, which I know you can. You can get it from YouTube and MySpace. Pay attention to all the blogs at Unified Field Radio at blogspot.com.